Decades after he made his mark as a fan favorite and a legend in New York City, Willie Mays made his return to the city in a trade for an interesting farewell that brought fanfare, criticism, and a World Series appearance. So let's look at how he made his return and how his legendary career ended.
Totally sports-esque. Major League.
Before he would retire as one of the 3 members of the 600 Home Run Club and make the Hall of Fame first ballot, things started for Willie Mays in New York, and he played with the team most attached to him in the Giants. And of course, in this time, they were the New York Giants. In his 7 years in New York, spanning 5.5 seasons as a result of his military service, he had 187 home runs while hitting .312 with a .980 OPS. He also won the Rookie of the Year, made 4 All-Star teams, and won MVP in the same year the Giants won their last World Series in New York in 1954. Naturally, he was a fan favorite, and he gave the love back, often participating in stickball games in Harlem a couple nights a week. But after 1957, Mays and the Giants made their way to the West Coast in San Francisco, along with the rival Brooklyn Dodgers, who were making their way to Los Angeles. Despite this, Mays remained a favorite amongst New Yorkers, even receiving a standing ovation in his final at-bat at the Polo Grounds. And he remained a fan favorite and one of the best in the game while in San Francisco. During the 60s, he hit 350 home runs, leading the league in home runs 3 times, while hitting exactly 300 with a .935 OPS, making the All-Star team in all those years, winning 9 of his 12 Gold Gloves, and winning his second MVP in 1965. And in all of those years, the Giants were competitive, with their best year coming in 1962 when they won 103 games to win the pennant, though they would lose the World Series in 7 games to the familiar New York Yankees. The Giants made the NLCS in 1971, 3 years into the new 4-team playoff format, and though the team was still contending, the worst thing that happened to the Giants in this time in terms of fandom and finance was the Kansas City Athletics making their way to Oakland to bring an American League team to the Bay Area. Everyone in baseball loved the move to grow the game, except for Giants owner Horace Stoneham, and that was obviously because it directly affected his team. The birth of the Oakland Athletics essentially cut the Giants' attendance in half, and in a time before large TV contracts, attendance was the primary revenue source. So to reduce costs, less expensive players needed to be signed, while established players had to be dealt, even the noted fan favorites. And Stoneham was already working on that, having dealt Orlando Cepeda, Gaylord Perry, Jim Hart, Juan Marichal, and Willie McCovey by the end of 1973. And there was another player who fans assumed would never wear anything other than a Giants uniform. Stoneham said multiple times that he would never trade Willie Mays, as he was the heart and soul of the franchise. But in 1971, he turned 40 years old and was obviously well past his prime, and considering they were supposed to pay him $165,000 in 1972 and 73, they were left with no choice. Wanting to bring Mays to a place he felt comfortable with the added nostalgia, Stoneham began secret negotiations with the Mets to not upset Mays. But columnists found out and began speculations, which is how Mays found out. And on May 11, 1972, Mays was officially traded to the Mets for minor leaguer Charlie Williams and a rumored unknown amount of cash. The surprising announcement was made in a Mayfair hotel that Mays was returning to New York for the first time in 15 years, playing for a team that didn't even exist when he was last there. Funny enough, his first game in a Mets uniform was against the Giants, and he hit the game-winning home run in a 5-4 game. Later that night, Stoneham and Mays had dinner, with Stoneham reportedly emotionally telling Mays how much he regretted trading him, with Mays later acknowledging how much that meant to him. And as for the press, the New York media was praising the nostalgic return of Mays, reminding younger fans of how good he was, and some claiming he was still one of the best in the league, an obvious reach. As for the San Francisco media, the coverage was negative, especially in regards to the little return and the fact that this trade signaled that the Giants were in obvious decline. And they were right, as the Giants would have only one season over 500 over the next 5 seasons, and attendance dropped steadily along with their record. 1974 and 75 brought the worst attendance numbers for the Giants in San Francisco, with some games having less than 1,000 fans. And having virtually no money at the start of 1975, Stoneham sold the team to Bob Lurie in 1976 and retired after 50 years in the game. As for Willie Mays on the Mets, there was plenty of excitement in Queens. Mays didn't play every day, but he brought energy to the team and brought in fans for the possibility of watching him play. And as the Mets dealt with mid-season injuries, Mays ended up having to play. Older fans, both at Shea and on the road, came out to watch their old hero, who had a below-average season by his standards, hitting 8 home runs with a .267 average in 69 games. But his .402 on-base percentage led the team, and his .466 slugging percentage was second, and young players including Tom Seaver noted his leadership. problem between Mets manager Yogi Berra and Mays also developed during the season, as Berra wanted complete control over Mays' playing time that Mays felt was often too much for his 40-year-old body, and with this, he knew 1973 would be his last year. Injuries and decline were now too much of a concern, and his performance as 1973 began made it obvious to everyone. Mays arrived a day late to spring training and left in the middle of spring training. As a result, Yogi Berra fined him $1,000. And the fact that this was the end became painfully obvious as the season started. Getting put on the disabled list earlier in the year, with little playing time that at one point caused him to leave a game early after not seeing Berra write his name in the lineup. At the midway point of the season, he was hitting just .208 with 3 home runs and 33 starts. He did make the All-Star team for the 24th and final time, thanks to special intervention by Chub Finney. Some journalists described his performance as tragic, with one New York columnist saying his fallings are now so cruel that I'm relieved when he's not in the lineup. Players were naturally more sympathetic, noting how hard it was for him to continue at this point with the injuries and his old age, with Tug McGraw saying that he sometimes forced himself to play and he would get hurt trying to do that. Mays hit his 660th and final home run on August 17th, and earlier that month, the Mets announced an upcoming Willie Mays night in September at Shea, and though not official, it made things very obvious to the public that 1973 was in fact the end. Mays received standing ovations while playing on the road for the last time in different cities, and he officially announced his retirement on September 20th on The Today Show, and later held a press conference where he said, "When you're 42 and hitting .221, it's no fun. I feel that the people of America shouldn't have to see a guy play who can't produce," though he didn't realize the people of America in fact love doing that. Either way, Willie Mays night was held on the 25th with the likes of Joe DiMaggio, Stan Musial, Duke Snider, and other teammates and celebrities present. Mays didn't even play that night, as the Mets picked up a 2-1 win over the Expos, and he never played a regular season game after September 9th. But his career wasn't over just yet, as despite winning 82 games, the Mets won the NL East. The Mets went up against the Reds in the NLCS, and Mays helped restore order in Game 3 after fans began throwing trash at Pete Rose after starting a brawl with Bud Harrelson. Mays would make one appearance in Game 5, going 1 for 3 with a pinch hit RBI single, as the Mets won 7-2 to clinch the NL pennant and make them the worst team by record to ever win a pennant, which meant Mays' career would end in the World Series against the defending champion Oakland Athletics, whose existence in part led to Mays ending up in New York. And after the injury to Rusty Staub, Mays was starting his first game in over a month in Game 1 of the World Series in center field. Mays went 1 for 4 in Game 1 as the Mets lost. Then in Game 2, Mays came into pinch run and made a critical error that allowed the A's to tie the game and send the game to extras. But he redeemed himself by hitting the go-ahead single in the 12th off Raleigh Fingers to add 34% to the Mets' win probability as they took Game 2, and this would end up being the last hit of his career, as he pinch hit in the 10th of Game 3 and grounded out. Then he didn't appear again, as the Mets lost in 7 games, denying them a chance to be the worst World Series winning team of all time, and putting an end to the legendary career of Willie Mays. Mays' final year is reminiscent of many final years of great players. Kind of sad to watch knowing the prime years are well gone, but allowing fans to appreciate the final moments, just like we got to appreciate Tim Duncan's final moments when he retired at 3 in the morning. In terms of added value, it was a lose-lose for both teams, but the trade was much more significant than what happened on the field. Despite only playing 1.5 subpar seasons for the Mets, Mays would have his number retired in 2022 at Citi Field, decades after the Mets' original owner, Joan Payson, promised he would be the last Met to wear number 24. The introduction of the Mets in 1962 represented filling the space for the vacant Dodgers and Giants, the team Mays is most associated with, and where he got his start. In terms of performance, Mays doesn't deserve the Mets number retirement, but it seems to be more of a nod towards what he had already done in New York for a team that moved west. The trade in the end was a great representation of the time in New York in the move. The trade brought a tough period for the Giants, losing their franchise player, while the move allowed Mays to end his career the same way it started, losing the World Series while playing in New York, not to be overshadowed by what he had already done. And maybe one day, the Mets will bring back another legend like Bobby Bonilla to give him a chance to earn money from the Mets the same way he has for over a decade, by doing absolutely nothing.